What is up, everybody? I am Legend with iZotope, and in today's video we're going to be discussing what de-essing is, when to use it, and how to get the best results when doing so. And we'll be using a few tools from iZotope's Music Production Suite Pro membership, so if you want to follow along, check the description below to start your free trial today. Without further ado, let's jump right into the video. So a de-esser is a tool used to reduce the sound of sibilants, which is like higher frequency, hissing, harsher noises like shh, s, f, any kind of like hissing, harsher noise that you hear from that higher frequency spectrum. So now that we know what a de-esser is, let's go ahead and apply it in a real world scenario where we can see just how to utilize one. And I have a song here, there's a section where there's a lot of S's going on in the beginning of this bridge.
'Cause even I had to let you go. It takes two to tango and it's Durango, but I only make love when I'm in the Range Rover.
Now I'll play it one time without the instrumental.
It takes two to tango and it's Durango, but I only make love when I'm in the Range Rover.
It takes two to tango in this Durango. So there's a lot of T's, a lot of S's in this particular example. So it's a perfect way to demonstrate how to use a de-esser. Now in regular dialogue, something like this wouldn't really matter because we as humans, we talk with these harsher frequencies and it's natural. We can't de-ess ourselves. However, when it comes to music, we want to make the sound as pleasurable as possible without taking away too much of the frequency because you still want it to sound as natural as possible as well. So in your vocal recording process, there could be a multitude of things that cause your vocals to have a lot more sibilants than is desired, whether it's a bad microphone or audio interface, or the way that you process your vocals to begin with that can add some brightness to the vocal. Now in this case, I have a pretty decent microphone, so that's not so much the problem. It's just that I want to tone down the sound of my harsh S's that are going on in this particular line. And the reason why it's important to de-ess your vocals, even on a smaller scale, if you have the best microphone that doesn't really have any kind of hissing noises or things like that, is because when you get into the stacking realm and you're starting to dub your vocals or have multiple stacks for one vocal and they all have these harsh consonants on there, you start to run into the issues of having a bunch of S's attack you all at once, and it becomes a little less pleasurable to listen to. So when choosing how to de-ess, you'll want to pick a tool that fits your experience level. And here we have two examples. A more beginner approach with Vocal Assistant is in Nectar Pro, and then a more advanced approach for people that have more experience and want to be more hands-on, we will use RX Pro's de-ess module. So in the case of Nectar Pro, the first thing that we'll want to do is tap on Vocal Assistant, and this is going to lay the groundwork for you. Not only add a vocal chain to your track that you have selected, but also it's going to add in that de-esser within that chain, and you can see kind of how it's working the vocal for you. So let's go ahead and click Vocal Assistant. We'll click Enhance, we'll click Next, and then we'll play the audio.
It takes two to tango and it's Durango, but I only make love when I'm in the Range Rover.
And then from here, you select the intensity that you want. So this is more like a stylistic choice that you want to go for. Now, I already went through this process. So we can see Nectar Pro has already built out a vocal chain for us based on the assist feature that we just went through. And we see the de-esser at what stage in that chain it is appearing. So this kind of lends a hand in teaching you where to put a de-esser in your own custom chain that you might make yourself with whatever plugins that you use. So let's go ahead and enable our de-esser. And here you'll see the threshold, which determines the level of sibilants that can pass through the de-esser before the compressor gets triggered. And this one here is the cutoff frequency, which determines the frequency boundary the de-esser will operate in. So any frequency above the cutoff frequency will be analyzed for de-essing. So let's go ahead and listen to the before and after.
It takes two to tango and it's Durango, but I only make love when I'm in the Range Rover.
And here's after.
It takes two to tango and it's Durango, but I only make love when I'm in the Range Rover.
So you can hear how the vocal changed just ever so slightly to not be as sharp as it previously was. And that's essentially what we're trying to do without overdoing it. Because while a de-esser is a great tool to use to clean up your vocals, there is a such thing as too much of a good thing. So I'll show you an example. If we do too much subtracting, we'll end up distorting our vocals in a way that doesn't sound too nice or too pleasurable to listen to. So first, I'll take my threshold and do an extreme example of de-essing. So we're gonna turn our threshold all the way down and we're gonna cut out all these vocals. The listen feature is handy because when enabled, the signal content that is being reduced by the de-esser is played back in isolation.
Takes two tango, Mr. Rainbow, but I only make love Range Rover. Takes two
So as you can see, it's taking out even part of my vocal that I'm singing, the notes, which is not a good thing. And if I take off this listen feature, you'll see that it's kind of distorting the vocal in a way that we don't want it to sound.
It takes two to tango in this Durango, but I only make love in the mid-range road.
It's almost like it has kind of like a muffle to it. So what we want to do is we want to drag up this frequency here, turn on listen, and then we'll try and dial in how we want our sibilants subtracted from this track.
Takes two.
And then in Nectar Pro, we have this mix slider here, which basically is how much of the de-esser we want to apply to this vocal. So this is kind of like how we blend to taste. We don't have to have it all the way up to 100 if we don't want to. Down to 0 is going to be no effect whatsoever. So whether you want to go 50 or all into 100, I normally would do 100, but it depends entirely on your taste.
It takes two to tango in this Durango, but I only make love in the mid-range road.
That's a decent amount. I'd say that's a decent amount. So I would be happy with this. Now on the more advanced side of things, we have RX Pro DS, which is a more complex de-esser to use, and it gives us a lot more parameters to dial in the sound of the sibilants that we want when processing our vocal. We have the same threshold and cutoff parameters that we have in Nectar Pro's de-esser with the cutoff and threshold here, but we have the added parameters of the speed, which is how fast or slow we want this module to interact with our vocal, and the spectral shaping and spectral tilt, which allows us to color the vocal in the way that we want when processing our sibilants. As far as the algorithm goes in RX Pro DS, Classic is going to be just the basic processing of our sibilants with the threshold and the cutoff, and Spectral is going to be a more targeted approach, so it gives us these extra features. So first we'll enable output S only, and we'll dial in our threshold and cutoff frequency parameters until we start to hear just the sibilants being taken out of that vocal. If we start to hear entire words just like before, that's how we know we've gone too far.
It takes two to tango.
So then we're going to uncheck output S only, and we're going to have the speed on fast because I want this to interact with my vocal fast. And when it comes to spectral shaping and spectral tilt, we're going to turn spectral shaping all the way up to 100 for a dramatic effect of what is going on in the processing of our vocal. And we're going to cycle through brown noise, which is like a warmer sound of sibilants, pink noise, which is kind of in between brown and white noise, which is the brightest of all three. And what we're essentially doing in this process is controlling the amount of sibilants that's being heard and what type of sibilants it is, from a warmer to a brighter sound. I'm going to start with brown here.
It takes two to tango in this Durango, but I only make love in the mid-range road. It takes two to tango in this Durango, but I only make love in the mid-range road. It takes two to tango in this Durango, but I only make love in the mid-range road.
I like to favor the warmer side, but still have a little bit of that higher frequency, so that's why I have it still kind of in the pink range. Now let's go ahead and hear a before and after of this change.
It takes two to tango in this Durango, but I only make love in the mid-range road. It takes two to tango in this Durango, but I only make love in the mid-range road.
Even if the change is very small and minute, the purpose here is not to completely take out the sibilants of a vocal, because naturally we want those sounds in there. We have S's in our alphabet and in the words that we speak. However, we want to be able to control how much of that higher frequency and piercing noise is being heard through the audio. And so that's why when de-essing, it's important to have a nice amount of modesty when processing your vocals. Otherwise, you can go overboard and make your vocal sound unnatural. So whichever de-esser you decide to use depends entirely on your experience level. I would say Nectar Pro is more so like a simpler approach to de-essing, something that's really streamlined and straightforward. And RX Pro is for the more advanced and experienced users who want to really dial in a particular sound they have in mind for their vocal. So this was a brief walkthrough on what a de-esser is and when and how to apply it to a vocal using iZotope's Music Production Suite Pro. If you want to give some of these tools a try for yourself, check the link down in the description to start your free trial today. As always, thank you for watching and stay legendary.